I saw Jurassic World Dominion several times in cinema. The first time, I had mixed feelings. The second time, I began to notice something.
This year, man. What's next?
Historically, darkness, blood, rain of fire, I think frogs. We're not gonna be around for much longer anyway. These locusts in Nebraska are about to wrap it up. They're eating the corn, wheat, basically all of our food and our food's food, so we can say goodbye to this.
And on the third time, I became convinced that he was right.
Has the entire world been watching this movie incorrectly? It isn't just another movie about dinosaurs terrorizing humanity, but instead is a retelling of the Exodus story. I know that sounds rather absurd, but hear me out.
The Exodus is about the Hebrews being held captive by Pharaoh and used for the benefit of Egypt before Moses delivered them to a promised land after 40 years in the desert and afflicting 10 plagues unto Egypt. Meanwhile, Jurassic World Dominion is about dinosaurs being held captive by Biosyn and used for the commercial benefit of Biosyn, before residing in the global sanctuary after disaster is inflicted upon Biosyn.
At first, this all seems like a stretch, and with just that statement, it is. But stay with me, and soon it will all make sense.
Before we continue, allow me to clarify that while I have read the entire Exodus story from start to finish straight from the Bible for research in this video, the various movies and other retellings are also important, as various aspects of the Exodus story actually originate in them.
And are certainly more familiar to the writing team behind the movie than the Exodus itself. And also, the audience in general will be more familiar with them. While the majority of people watching this probably know the general gist of the Exodus story, before we continue, here is a brief summary of the Exodus and why it is important. The Exodus is the second book in the Bible and the Torah. It is the fifth longest book in the Bible and one of the most important. It is about the Hebrews being enslaved in Egypt. After 400 years of being forced into manual labor, they started speaking of a deliverer who would free them from slavery. To prevent this, the Pharaoh of Egypt ordered that all the newborns of the Hebrews be executed. One child survived by being placed in a basket and sent on the Nile River, where he ended up being found by the Egyptian royal family, where he was raised as a prince of Egypt.
I'm the Pharaoh's daughter, and this is my son. He shall be reared in my house as the prince of the two lands.
Eventually, this man killed an Egyptian slave driver and fled Egypt, arriving at a small civilization called Midian. He spent 40 years there before being told by God in the form of a burning bush to return to Egypt and free the Hebrews. And he did, taking his wife and child with him. He confronts Pharaoh, who doesn't yield, and so then God inflicts 10 plagues onto Egypt, one by one. After the 10th plague, Pharaoh finally yields and the Hebrews leave Egypt. Eventually, Pharaoh changes his mind and takes his army to reclaim the slaves. The Hebrews were concerned by the Red Sea in front of them, and so Moses parted the Red Sea with God's help. While God held the Egyptian army back with fire and smoke. After the Hebrews get across, God lets go of the fire and smoke to give Pharaoh one last chance to leave and prove he has changed. But instead of returning to Egypt, he persisted and led his army into the Red Sea, upon which then God let go of the sea, causing the entire Egyptian army and Pharaoh to drown.
The Hebrews then spend 40 years in the desert before they are able to reach their promised land, where eventually in the future they would become modern-day Jews.
The Exodus story is very long and often rather complex. For those that would like a more in-depth understanding but don't want to read the whole book, as it can be rather daunting, there have been several film adaptations made over the years. Most notably, The Ten Commandments and the animated Prince of Egypt. While both of them take some liberties, they are both quite accurate retellings. To modern-day Jews, the Exodus story is what the holiday called Passover is all about. This is a day of remembering the Exodus story and how their ancestors struggled in slavery in Egypt and how they were rescued. As for this video itself, we will be taking the Exodus story as a story. It means many different things to many different people, but for our purposes here today, all that is important is the story itself and what happens in it. That is what we will be looking at. Now, without further ado, let us begin. Now, the 10 plagues of Egypt in order were turning the Nile to blood, frogs, lice, flies, livestock petulance, boils, falling fire, locusts, 3 days of darkness, and the killing of the firstborn child. Every single one of these appears in the movie. The most obvious one of these that applies to the movie are the locusts. They play a major part of the movie and are in many ways the main threat to the world as a whole. Lice and flies can also be folded into the locusts as they are all flying insects that serve the same purpose. But also, there is a very quick line which is, we made sure they couldn't eat lice.
What do people know? The locusts were designed to spread genetic modifications to crops. Protection against droughts, frost, disease, a breakthrough.
Goddamn right it was.
Yeah, only it didn't work. He made sure they couldn't eat bison seeds, so they started eating everything else.
Which I did not see coming.
Which would mean that there are a hell of a lot more lice out there than normal because of this, adding to the plague parallel. The explosive finale of the movie also involves setting the locusts on fire and them breaking out of their enclosure, upon which they fall down. Literally raining fire from the heavens and accounting for another plague, the raining fire. In the clip shown earlier, the man says, basically all of our food and our food's food, which is directly stating death of livestock and crop failure, which Sattler also says earlier in the movie.
While not directly a plague, crop failure is a part of some of the adaptations, like Prince of Egypt.
Now, the Blood Nile is perhaps the loosest, with the opening scene of the extended edition featuring the T-Rex being killed falling into a small river before a mosquito takes its blood. It's certainly not turning an entire river to blood, but it could be a nod towards it nonetheless. The pestilence isn't quite direct, but it is there. Biosyn is a pharmaceutical company that was using the dinosaurs for pharmaceutical practices. They relied on pestilence to keep them in business, as it were. They made the locusts to inflict pestilence on the crops that they do not produce themselves.
You plant the same seed as the Bennetts?
No. We are independent.
They use biosyn seed.
Not only do locusts carry disease, but more importantly, Maisie Lockwood's mother died from a genetic disease, dying from pestilence.
And even more importantly than that, Dr. Henry Wu plans to kill the locusts with a pathogen that is genetically coded to them, essentially inflicting pestilence upon them.
One of the more symbolic plagues is the 3 days of darkness. Not only does the finale take place at night when everything is dark, but Biosyn systems all shut down, essentially leaving Biosyn in the dark. Now, while it doesn't last for 3 days, it is something the movie could have more or less left out, so it is important in some way or another. Now, before talking about the frogs and firstborn child, let's first talk about the only plague that doesn't really come into effect, those being the boils. There isn't really anything that happens in the movie that could be considered boils or a symbolic boil, aside from maybe at a stretch, genetic manipulation itself being a symbolic version of it, but again, that is a large stretch. Now, for the final plagues that do fit, The death of the firstborn child is almost certainly Maisie Lockwood's mother, Charlotte. She was an only child, and as such, firstborn of Benjamin Lockwood, the man who is just as important to the foundation of Jurassic Park as is John Hammond. And her death was the butterfly effect that caused all of these events to transpire. Just as the death of the firstborn was the event that caused Pharaoh to release the Hebrews, which in turn caused even more events to transpire. Especially appropriate for a movie series that has a large part of the first movie's foundation being chaos.
Set patterns or park schedules, the essence of chaos.
I'm still not clear on chaos.
It simply deals with predictability in complex systems. The shorthand is the butterfly effect. A butterfly can flap its wings in Peking, and in Central Park you get rain instead of sunshine.
Why?
As for the frogs, which is often considered the first plague, there's not a frog in this movie. There's swamp and there's a lot of water, but there's no frogs. Except there is frog DNA. The dinosaurs themselves, at least the first generation of dinosaurs, are the frogs. And they, like the rest of the plagues, caused the fall of Biocene, just as the frogs did to Egypt. The connection between this movie and the Exodus does not stop at the plagues. There are also characters that fit their respective roles, such as Pharaoh, who is the head of Biocene, Lewis Dodgson. He only cares about the dinosaurs for his own personal gains, and even when told what to do, he remains stubborn against all logic.
I do not know this god. Neither will I let your people go.
Ramesses, please, you must listen.
I will not be the weak link.
He also, after everything craps out, decides to just try again. This leads to his death.
What's your story?
What?
This is just like how Pharaoh tried to reclaim and or kill the Hebrew slaves and died in the process when he drowned in the Red Sea.
He also ignores every instance of people telling him he is wrong, just as Pharaoh does. Pharaoh in Exodus is confronted directly by Moses on multiple occasions, and in the Exodus book itself, Moses' brother Aaron does so as well. While he never talked to God directly, he does get direct signs from him. This is similar to how Dodgson is confronted by characters like Dr. Wu and Ian Malcolm, yet he still persists.
You're racing toward the extinction of our species, and you don't care. You know exactly what you're doing, but you won't stop. You can't.
You know, I thought you might be different, but you're just like everyone else. You see what you want to see. You imagine unchecked avarice, so that's what you find. You envision what? An evil, unbound Prometheus, so that's what I am to you?
Prometheus got gored. So will you rapacious rat bastard.
Pharaoh is also prone to anger, and as the story goes on, he gets continually more and more enraged. Dodgson has all the same failings as Pharaoh in the Bible and the same motivations. One could even argue that Biocene was the most powerful organization on the planet, as they were very close to controlling the world's food supply. Just as Egypt was the most powerful nation in the world in the Exodus. While being the most powerful nation in the world never has been especially historically true, Egypt has always had a tradition of food exports, especially grain. This is in fact the main reason that Julius Caesar had an alliance with Cleopatra rather than just a straightforward conquest. Along with Cleopatra's later alliance with Mark Antony, they both wanted Egypt's grain, not its land. But that is probably just a coincidence. He also has his assistant Ramsey, whose name is almost identical to Ramses, which is very often the name of the pharaoh in the Exodus, while in the Exodus itself, the pharaoh is unnamed. However, he is actually Moses, as Moses in the Exodus was taken in by Pharaoh's family and raised as one of their own.
But he chose the Hebrews over them and delivered them unto the promised land.
This is just like how in Dominion, Ramses is taken in by Biosyn, but ultimately chooses the dinosaurs and frees them into a global sanctuary.
You told Malcolm about the program. You set this whole thing up? You set me up? I gave you every opportunity I did not have. We have an understanding, Ramsey. And you do not break that.
Which is basically a promised land for dinosaurs. Maisie also has a small bit of Moses symbolism with her, as much like Moses, she was supposed to die. In the Exodus, it was from Pharaoh ordering the Hebrews' children's death, but in Dominion, it is from a genetic disorder. Both times, the child is saved because of action taken by the mother, which leads to the child being raised by other parents. The Egyptian royal family in Exodus and the Lockwood estate, and eventually Owen and Claire in Jurassic World. In the Exodus, Moses also had a brother who in the Bible especially is arguably just as important to the story as Moses is. He stands by Moses and confronts Pharaoh on multiple occasions. Aaron also is a prophet and would sometimes be used to give a different philosophy to Moses. This is just like how Ian Malcolm confronts Dodgson and offers up an opposing philosophical standpoint since the first ever Jurassic Park movie, and continues to in this one.
I'll tell you the problem with the scientific power that you're using here. It didn't require any discipline to attain it. You know, you read what others had done, and you took the next step. You didn't earn the knowledge for yourselves, so you don't take any responsibility for it. You stood on the shoulders of geniuses to accomplish something as fast as you could, and before you even knew what you had, you patented it and packaged it and slapped it on a plastic lunchbox, and now you're selling it. You want to sell it. Well,
human beings have no more right to safety or liberty than any other creature on this planet. We not only lack dominion over nature, we're subordinate to it. And now, here we are, with the opportunity to rewrite life at our fingertips. And just like nuclear power, nobody knew what to expect with genetic engineering, but they pressed the button and hoped for the best, just like you are doing now.
The dinosaurs function as the Hebrews, which you will have figured out by this point. They were taken from their home, used for biosyn profit, held in captivity, and they couldn't do anything about it without outside interference. This is just like the Exodus, where the Hebrews are kept in slavery and used for the benefit of Egypt. And they couldn't do anything about it without Moses and God interfering on their behalf. Now, while at first it might seem obscene to compare dinosaurs in captivity to Hebrews in slavery, after all, the enslavement of the Hebrews was humans enslaving other humans. Meanwhile, dinosaurs are about as different from humans as land dwellers can get. But keep in mind, this is metaphorical. The dinosaurs are not being exploited the same way the Hebrews are. Humans can be made to build cities by force, but animals can't. But by representing the Hebrews through dinosaurs, it makes the movie much more original and interesting than just another Exodus movie. And as strange as it sounds, it's often easier for humans to analyze humanity by removing the humans, such as Planet of the Apes, which essentially has this as the foundation.
Objection! This exhibit is indeed a man. Therefore, he has no rights under ape law. Dr. Zira, this is a man, is it not?
He is unlike any man you have ever seen, as we hope to prove.
Answer the question, Dr. Zira. Is it a man?
Sir, perhaps the question is the point at issue. Is he a man? Is he a deviant or a freak of nature?
Objection. Sustained now, Dr. Zira. In all fairness, you must admit that the accused is a non-ape and therefore has no rights under ape law.
Then why is he called the accused? Your honors must think him guilty of something.
There was even a sitcom called Dinosaurs back in the day, which specifically had intentionally farcical dinosaur puppets telling the stories. This allowed them to do things like analyze how the Cold War was affecting people on the household level.
If your mother can take the time to kill this dinner, you can take the time to eat it.
What? Why do we have to eat animals every night? You know, it's possible to get nutrition from vegetables. Uh-oh.
Well, it's happened, Franny. The Green Menace has crept into our very home.
Robbie isn't one of those radicals.
There's one hiding under every bed, Fran. Robbie, I'm going to ask you something. I'm going to ask you straight out. Are you now, or have you ever been an herbivore?
This is nuts. I don't have to answer this.
You either answer me or you go to your room.
Fine.
Or even things like religious influence on politics or the dogma in education systems.
Miss Sinclair, I congratulate you. The world is round. This does my heart good. It's the kind of bold, original thinking a teacher seldom sees in the classroom.
Charlene Sinclair, you're under arrest for heresy.
Of course, there's probably a good reason for that.
These are all things that, had humans been the main characters, would have never been allowed to even air in the 90s. The Jurassic Park movies have continually treated dinosaurs like characters. Rexy and Blue especially have their own personalities, fan bases, and motivations. If anything, Jurassic Park has shown continually that dinosaurs are more than the sum of their parts, and have also been used to analyze things in the past. In the first ever movie, it analyzes genetic power and how it should not be used to bring back dinosaurs or animals currently going extinct. So if the dinosaurs are the Hebrews, this is just another example of removing humans to reveal the humanity. Now, getting back to the human characters. It is possible that the new character, the pilot Kayla Watts, is Miriam, Moses' sister. She isn't as important as Aaron or Moses in the Exodus narrative, but it is important to note that she's a member of Moses' family, and an important one. She helps Claire and Owen in their quest.
Which, while useful, she wasn't strictly necessary to get to the ending of the movie, as another method to get to Biosyn could have hypothetically been used quite easily, like sneaking on board a transport.
Miriam in the Exodus also watches over Moses, including the moment that Moses arrives at Pharaoh's place. This is similar to a scene in Dominion where Watts sees Maisie being exchanged at an airfield. She takes no action then to prevent the change, but that scene later determines Watts' motivation and actions for the rest of the movie. Just like how it did Miriam in the Exodus. Those were the simple character parallels. But in the Exodus, there is another character, an incredibly important character. Can you guess? God. So, who is God in this story? Well, who else? Dr. Henry Wu. Dr. Henry Wu created the locusts, the dinosaurs with their frog DNA. He told Dodgson that they needed to change. He knew Charlotte Lockwood, and he might have even trained her in genetics leading to Maisie. And he infected the locusts with pestilence. And without the locusts, the fires wouldn't have happened. The only plague he is not responsible for directly is the Blood River and the darkness, both of which were entirely out of his control. God in the Exodus is also responsible for both bringing the plagues to Egypt and sending them away. Just as John Woo does with the locusts, he brought them into the world and he deletes them from it all the same. Most importantly of all, creating new species and messing with genetic power is literally playing God.
All of this exists because of me.
There are far more main characters in Dominion than there are in the Exodus. We have Alan Grant, Ellie Sattler, Ian Malcolm, Dodgson Ramsey, Owen Grady, Claire Daring, Maisie, and Kayla Watts. So obviously, not every character is going to be connected to a biblical character. However, some of them can share in some of their actions. By the time of Dominion, Claire and Owen are living together in a cabin in the woods away from civilization, and while not married, are together. Just like how Moses fled to Midian and got married and had children. Both of them also leave the safety of Midian or their cabins to go save the Hebrews, or Maisie. Moses also takes his wife Zipporah and son with him to Egypt, similar to how Owen and Claire go to Biosyn Valley together, to find Maisie and also Blue's child, Beta. Another scene that could be a reference is the scene with Alan, Maisie, and Ellie in the Amber Mines. Moses talked to the burning bush in the cave, just as how Alan had the torch with him, which was on fire and therefore burning. This might not be a burning bush, but is still something burning in a cave. And really, this whole sequence is a little pointless as well. They could have just continued in the Hyperloop and had Malcolm meet them there, and nothing in the movie would have changed. It's almost like it was inserted into the movie for the purpose of a parallel, instead of actually moving the plot forward. It's also worth noting that in the finale, the entire valley is on fire, which would result in a lot of bushes being on fire. The rest of the movie unfolds pretty quickly to the Exodus, the main characters acting as Moses and Aaron showing up, confronting Dodson acting as Pharaoh, and the plagues are inflicted, leading to the dinosaurs' release. Except they aren't released in the movie like that. They're herded towards the Biosyn compound to escape the fire. The large doors are parted to let them through. This is the parting of the Red Sea. While Ramsey doesn't do it, instead it's Dojin, it is still the same event. In the Exodus, God created a wall of fire and smoke to protect the Hebrews and keep the Egyptians from reclaiming them. In Dominion, the entire valley was on fire, leading to the parting of Biosyn gates to let the dinosaurs into safety. It is also only on fire and filled with smoke because Wu, or God, created the locusts. And because Dojin decided to destroy the evidence of the locust instead of just eliminating the species, he was refusing to take responsibility, just like Pharaoh.
The climax of the movie then happens, the battle between Rexy and the Giganotosaurus, a symbolic battle of the Hebrews as symbolized by Rexy and the Egyptians as symbolized by the Giganotosaurus. The Giganotosaurus easily overpowers Rexy, but in the end, she, with help from the Pharazenosaurus, is victorious. And before this happens, Dodgson is killed by the Dilophosaurus. He was killed by his own hubris, just like the Pharaoh in the Exodus. It could be read as the battle between Rexy and the Giganotosaurus as an army of Egypt and Dodgson as the Pharaoh himself. There are still possibly hundreds of dinosaurs out in the wild. They still have a figurative 40 years in the desert to traverse.
While all of that is quite a lot of connection together, there are still a couple of things that oppose this theory. The most obvious being, this could all be a coincidence. While that is pretty hard to prove or disprove, I would say that the CIA worker specifically brings up the Exodus in a scene. Seems to confirm that the writers at least had it in mind at some point. Since every line in the movie is specifically crafted, just like every other movie, unless it is improv, which this scene almost certainly wasn't, it seems to show that this story was on their mind. Another argument would be that the timeline is mismatched. Moses spent 40 years with Pharaoh, 40 years in Midian, and 40 years in the desert with the Hebrews. Meanwhile, this movie takes place over the course of like a week, which certainly doesn't add up to the timeline. But I would say that this is a minor quibble, as the timeline isn't especially of importance to the Exodus story itself. It is also different in adaptations, such as Prince of Egypt, which seems to have Moses leave for Midian in his early 20s or possibly younger, and return to Egypt as maybe 30 years old. So, while the timeline itself doesn't match, it probably couldn't, except under very specific circumstances. Another argument would be, well, why add religion into a secular movie? And this one is pretty simple. The Exodus is just a great story. Plus, it's known internationally by Jews, Christians, and atheists alike, not to mention many other religious people. And the movie doesn't emphasize the more religious aspects of the story, such as God. Instead, it's having them do the bare minimum to make the story match, while still making it not a religious movie. The final counter-argument would just be that there are parts of the movie that don't fit into the Exodus, such as Claire rescuing the baby dinosaur at the start of the movie, or the illegal black market subplot, or the fight with the Pyraptor on the ice. But none of that really fits into the Exodus story. You could, at a stretch, say that the black market was about Hebrews being sold into slavery, but the Exodus itself doesn't really reflect that in any of its story beats. But for the movie, what's important is that it is still a movie. Going for a direct one-to-one retelling of the Exodus with dinosaurs would probably be a little weird and also extremely obvious. But wanting to retell this story with dinosaurs and still have it feel original and unique, they would have added their own flair and plot points to keep it as their own movie instead of just another Exodus movie. What is undeniable, however, is that a lot of things add up. Even the title of Dominion could be another connection, as the word dominion shows up in the Bible fairly regularly, and the Egyptians have dominion over the Hebrews, just as Biosyn does with the dinosaurs.
The movie also does pay homage to things outside of itself, such as the Valley of Guanji, with the first scene of Chris Pratt lassoing the Parasaurolophus. Not only is it cowboys wrangling dinosaurs, but even the music is extremely similar.
And if this movie pays homage to that movie, then there's no reason why they wouldn't also have other stories in mind for writing this movie, such as the Exodus retelling. So, was this intentional? Did they make a remake of Exodus with dinosaurs? Well, we may never know for sure, but I certainly think so. And when this new movie comes out, Jurassic World Rebirth, it'll be interesting to see if any biblical themes seep through that one as well. And if you think that I missed anything, then please leave a comment for or against. If there's more to this theory, then let it be known. Until next time, stay tuned.